Imagine waking up one morning and realizing money still exists, but it no longer matters. Your bank app works, your safe is full, your gold is right where you left it, and yet you're hungry, cold, and suddenly bargaining with things you never thought you'd trade. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear. In a real economic collapse, wealth doesn't disappear, it loses its language. And the people who survive aren't the richest, they're the most useful. Let me take you somewhere dark for a moment, not to scare you, but to wake you up. During a prolonged siege in the early 1990s, an ordinary European city collapsed into something unrecognizable. No electricity, no clean water, no supply chains, no police, no rules. People who once had professional careers were suddenly reduced to bartering like it was the Stone Age. Gold watches, necklaces, family heirlooms, worthless. Not because gold isn't valuable, but because value is contextual, and when hyperinflation hits, when currencies implode, when shelves go empty, the context changes overnight. Here's what actually held power: fire, tools, skills, community. People who could fix things ate. People who could grow food survived. People who knew how to trade without money thrived. And people who clutched gold while waiting for normal to return, they didn't last. This is where conventional investing advice breaks down. We're told to hedge collapse with precious metals, stack gold, stack silver. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. That logic makes sense until the system itself fractures. Because in a true economic breakdown, gold doesn't feed you. It doesn't keep you warm, it doesn't protect you, and it doesn't create trust. Now here's the twist most people never see coming. There's a group in North America that has quietly outperformed almost everyone during every financial shock for over a century. They don't speculate, they don't hedge with derivatives, they don't chase yield, they build resilience. While empires inflate and currencies decay, they compound something far more powerful than money. And this is where the idea of the Amish Hedge comes in. It's not about rejecting modern life, it's not about living off-grid, and it's definitely not about fear. It's about understanding what actually holds value when economic collapse, hyperinflation, and systemic risk stop being theories and start being headlines. Because once you see this hedge clearly, gold starts to look incomplete, and the next question becomes dangerous. If gold isn't enough, what is? Let me tell you why the Amish don't panic when the system shakes. No CNBC alerts, no doom scrolling, no frantic asset rotation. Because their hedge isn't financial, it's structural. Here's the mistake most investors make when thinking about economic collapse and hyperinflation. They assume the crisis is about prices. It's not. Prices are just the symptom. The real collapse happens when systems fail simultaneously: money, energy, logistics, trust. Gold protects against monetary failure. It does nothing against systemic failure. The Amish figured this out generations ago without ever calling it a strategy. Think about it. They don't depend on fragile global supply chains. They don't rely on constant electricity. They don't outsource survival to corporations or governments. Their wealth is embedded in capability. If money becomes unstable, they still eat. If fuel prices explode, they still move. If banks freeze withdrawals, they still trade. That's not ideology, that's positioning. And here's the part most people miss. They're not poor. On paper, many Amish households look underinvested. No stock portfolios, no crypto, no gold vaults. Yet their real purchasing power during disruptions is shockingly high. Why? Because in a collapse, the most valuable currency isn't dollars or gold, it's independence. Let me put it brutally clearly. When hyperinflation hits, everyone rushes to convert money into things, but by the time the crowd moves, it's already too late. Shelves empty, prices gap overnight, access becomes the bottleneck, not wealth. The Amish already own the access. They own food production. They own repair knowledge. They own labor networks. They own trust-based trade systems that function without cash. Trust is the hidden asset here. In failed economies, trust replaces money. People trade with those they know will deliver, those who can show up, fix something, grow something, or protect something instantly become wealthy, regardless of what they own on paper. Gold can't build trust. Skills do. Community does. Redundancy does. This is why the Amish Hedge isn't about copying their lifestyle, it's about copying their logic. They don't ask, what will this be worth? They ask, will this still work if everything breaks? That question changes everything, because once you ask it, you start seeing conventional investing advice as dangerously incomplete. Gold is portable wealth, but not functional wealth. Stocks are claims, but not capabilities. Cash is liquidity, but only while confidence exists. The Amish Hedge quietly answers a different question. How do I stay valuable when money isn't? And once you understand that, the next realization hits even harder. You don't need to abandon modern investing, but you do need a second balance sheet, one Wall Street never taught you how to read, and that balance sheet is where the real hedge lives. So what exactly belongs on that one? What assets actually outperform gold when systems fail? That's where this gets uncomfortable. Here's the uncomfortable audit no one ever runs on their own life. If the grid went down tonight, if the currency cracked tomorrow, if supply chains froze next week, how many days could you function without asking the system for permission? That question is the Amish hedge in its rawest form. Because this hedge isn't a single asset, it's a stack, just not the kind your broker tracks. Let's start with the first layer, productive assets. Not assets that appreciate, assets that produce. Land that grows food, tools that turn raw inputs into usable outputs, skills that transform problems into solutions. In a hyperinflationary environment, productivity beats preservation every time. Gold preserves value if markets exist. Productive capacity creates value, especially when markets fail. That's why during every economic collapse in history, blacksmiths, mechanics, electricians, medics, and farmers didn't just survive, they became economic hubs. People organized around them, protected them, fed them. Their skill set became a form of currency. Now the second layer, repair over replacement. Modern economies are built on disposability. Collapse economies are built on maintenance. The Amish don't buy things they can't fix. That single rule turns scarcity into leverage. When replacement disappears, repair becomes priceless. A working generator in a blackout is wealth. A functioning well when water systems fail is wealth. A person who can keep both running, that's generational wealth in collapse terms. This is why usefulness compounds faster than interest. And here's the third layer. This one changes how you see investing entirely. Embedded community. Not followers, not contacts, not LinkedIn connections. Real, physical, mutual dependence community. In every collapsed economy, lone wolves lose. Groups win. The Amish structure life so that no household is a single point of failure. Labor is shared, knowledge is transferred, risk is distributed. That's not culture, that's risk management. Now, connect this to modern investing. When people hear economic collapse or hyperinflation, they picture charts going vertical. They don't picture coordination failures. But those failures are what kill portfolios and people. Gold can't coordinate labor. Bitcoin can't fix a roof. Stocks can't harvest food. The Amish hedge quietly replaces financial optionality with operational certainty. You still invest, you still save, you still plan. But alongside that, you build a parallel system, one that doesn't ask whether markets are open. And here's the moment where most viewers feel the shift. Because once you start listing what actually keeps you alive and valuable in collapse scenarios, you realize something chilling. Most modern wealth is just confidence dependent. Remove confidence and it evaporates. The Amish hedge doesn't evaporate. It functions under stress. And now comes the hardest part. If this hedge is so powerful, why don't more people build it? The answer exposes the most dangerous illusion in modern finance, because the Amish hedge requires something most people refuse to invest, not money, inconvenience. Modern finance is frictionless by design. Tap, swipe, allocate, forget. The Amish hedge is the opposite. It's slow, physical, uncomfortable, and impossible to outsource. That's why almost no one builds it. Let me explain the illusion that keeps people trapped. We've been trained to believe that abstraction equals safety. The more layers between you and reality, apps, accounts, institutions, the safer you feel. But collapse strips abstraction away. Hyperinflation doesn't just destroy currencies, it destroys distance. Suddenly, you're close to food again, close to energy again, close to security again. And if you don't know how those things actually work, you're exposed, no matter how much gold you own. This is why people with high net worth often fare worse in collapses than tradesmen. They optimized for efficiency, not resilience, for liquidity, not capability, for growth, not continuity. The Amish hedge forces a brutal but clarifying question. What part of my life still functions if convenience disappears? Most people don't like the answer, so they never ask. Here's another reason this hedge is rare. It doesn't feel like investing. You don't get statements, you don't see percentages, you don't brag about it at dinner. Learning how to repair an engine doesn't feel like building wealth. Knowing how to grow food doesn't feel like alpha. Building local trust networks doesn't feel scalable. But collapse doesn't reward what feels impressive. It rewards what works. And here's the psychological trap that seals it. People assume collapse will be fast and obvious, a crash, a reset, then normal returns. History says otherwise. Most collapses are slow, grinding, humiliating declines. Living standards erode, access shrinks, institutions hollow out. And during that phase, gold often does rise, giving people false confidence. They feel prepared right until functionality disappears. This is why the Amish hedge isn't about abandoning gold. It's about not stopping at gold. Gold is a bridge, not a destination. The destination is being anti-fragile, gaining advantage from disorder. That requires redundancy, local production, skill density, and social capital that doesn't vanish when screens go dark. Now here's the part that flips the script entirely. You don't need to live like the Amish. You don't need to reject technology. You don't need to opt out of markets. You just need to stop pretending markets are the only system that matters. Build two lives in parallel, one optimized for efficiency, one optimized for survival and leverage. Most people only build one. And when the economic weather changes, they're shocked to discover which one actually pays. So now the final question becomes unavoidable. If you wanted to start building the Amish hedge today, without quitting your job, without moving off-grid, without becoming extreme, what exactly would you do first? That answer is where everything comes together. Start small, but start real. The Amish hedge doesn't begin with a bunker or a farm. It begins with reversing a single assumption, that money is the most important form of security you can hold. It isn't. Money is permission. Capability is power. So here's the first move, one almost no one expects. Inventory your dependencies, not your assets. Ask yourself, what breaks my life fastest if it disappears for 30 days? Food? Power, water, transportation, medical access? Whatever tops that list is where your real risk lives, and therefore where your first hedge belongs. Now the second move, convert fragile dependence into local optionality, not total independence, optionality. Learn one skill that solves a physical problem people actually have. One. repair, electrical, medical basics, food production, mechanical troubleshooting. In hyperinflationary environments, specialization collapses, general competence skyrockets. A person who can do a little of many useful things becomes invaluable. Third move, own at least one productive asset that functions without the system, not for yield, for continuity. A small garden, a tool set, a backup power source, water storage, a repair bench. These aren't purchases, they're positioning. Fourth, and this is the real Amish hedge, build trust density. Know your neighbors, trade favors, share skills, create small, real obligations. In collapse, contracts fail. Reputation doesn't. The strongest hedge isn't gold, it's being known as someone who shows up and delivers. And now here's the final twist most people miss. Once you build this parallel balance sheet, skills, tools, trust, and production, your financial investments actually become safer. Why? Because you're no longer forced to liquidate at the worst possible moment. You're not selling assets to survive. You're choosing when to deploy capital. That's real optionality. That's real power. Gold still has a place, so do stocks, so does cash, but they sit on top of something more fundamental. The Amish hedge is what keeps you standing when everything else is renegotiated. And here's the quiet truth that should change how you see the future. The people who win during economic collapse don't predict it perfectly. They don't time it. They don't panic. They prepare to remain valuable no matter what money does. Don't just store wealth. Become wealth. That's the hedge no inflation can touch.